My name is Sergey Kornienko. I'm working at Devexperts for more than 11 years. I have started as a Java backend developer, then became a team lead, then solution architect, and now I'm head of one of the delivery units, and I'm responsible for the portfolio of FinTech projects. Today I'm going to tell you a story about starting the new project. First of all, guys, do we have backend developers here? Okay, cool. And how many of you was able to start the new enterprise project from very grounds? Okay, so looks like we have much less hands raised. This is always very challenging and very exciting period for the team. Then it was when there is a chance to start a new project. So today I'm going to share with you our experience, because for our team it was the first time when we have started something from scratch. Also, I will describe what challenges have we faced and what lessons have we learned finally. First of all, my unit is mostly responsible for custom development project, and most of them are trading platforms. Trading platform looks like this. So a lot of data, a lot of different use cases, quite complicated UI, and believe me, very complicated stuff on the backend side. Trading platforms could look differently, but usually we don't start them from the scratch. We have our great product that we use as a basement, so we can start with some out-of-the-box solution and just focus on some custom development on top of it. Here, for sure we have some positive side, because we don't need to re-implement similar stuff again and again, so you don't need to introduce order, account, entities once again. You probably don't need to go into details of some order routing. But on the other hand, internally, product-based projects are complex. So sometimes you don't need to even to understand all of these relations, but it is still required, and you still a bit limited with introducing new frameworks, introducing new approaches. So today I will tell you about another type of the project, and this is a Greenfield project. Guys, does everybody knows what is Greenfield project? What does it mean? A Greenfield project means that some client don't need our platform actually. Probably they do, but yeah, they come for just for our experience. So in this case, we have a lot of experience in different FinTech areas. So we have a good opportunity to start something from the beginning, not limited to any existing product solution. So Greenfield project, it means that it is a great opportunity for us to do some experiments, since we are not limited, and we can start something new better than it was. But there are some obvious limitations. Greenfield project is still a project. So this is not your pet project, and you can not simply add new technologies, do some hello worlds, and just test new frameworks. It is not an internal initiative, so usually you still have timelines, phases, and all of this stuff which limits you. And yeah, you have a client, and you should make this client happy. So you still have this management triangle with time, cost, and scope, and you should be somewhere in the middle in order to make this project successful. My team So here it is our client. Our client is a company who is focused in option portfolio management, in investment advisory, and account performance monitoring, and other option trading related stuff. So this project gives us a lot of opportunities, but there are some key points that I would like to highlight. First of all, business domain of this project is really complex. It is options trading. It is usually requires some additional level of understanding what is going on. This solution is for internal usage, but it is used by many departments, and it means that we have a lot of different scenarios, a lot of different use cases in the single UI. There is no demanding non-functional requirements, at least from the beginning. So here we are not limited with some fine-tuning of performance. So we are a bit more flexible from perspective of the approaches that we can use. Again, this is not a trading platform. And since it is not a trading platform, we don't have an extensive streaming events that should be displayed in the UI. So it is more or less static and more focused on some analytical stuff. And one more important thing here is that client was really involved into the process and always happy to provide some ideas, to share some sketches and assist the team with some knowledge sharing. Let's start with architecture. The first thing that we have discussed with the team and the key idea of our approach was, guys, let's try this time to keep it simple. And this is really important because we want to keep the technology stack and all approaches in the way that will help us to start very quickly, to do maintenance easily, to optimize some process which we are not happy with in our other projects. This project is supposed to be quite long term. We expect long collaboration with the client, so it should be flexible enough for adding new features in future. For sure, we want to have fast onboarding, but the main complexity, again, should be in the business part, not in the frameworks or not in the architecture. So from architectural perspective, we decided to use the good old layered architecture, where we have backend, where we have frontend, where we have REST API in the middle, databases I will explain a bit further. And on the backend side, we also have layers of controllers, business logic, and data access objects. So very, very standard architecture, very familiar to most of the developers, and I believe there is no any new stuff here. So let's then discuss ingredients that we use to build this project. First of all, let's speak about the basics. Our company is a Java shop mostly, so we just have chosen the most recent stable Java version. We added Gradle, and one more important note about this project is that it was supposed to be started in containers from the beginning. At that stage, we still had some projects without containerization, and we had suggestion that containers will help us to improve significantly our internal processes. And that's why we have chosen Docker and Kubernetes. I would say that as a fact, Docker, the team was really happy to work with Docker, and it helped us to resolve a lot of issues that I will describe further. For Kubernetes, it is more questionable because it is still not so simple. So I believe our DevOps engineers could provide better feedback here, but at the moment when we will have a chance to start new project, we will definitely consider other options. Yeah, for monitoring, we also added Grafana and Prometheus from the beginning, just to be able to analyze some metrics and be aware of what is going on. So as a main framework, again, there is no any surprises. We have chosen Spring Boot. I believe this is quite an obvious choice because with minimum configuration, with containers-friendly approach, it really boosts your development, so you don't need to care about many things. We have defined the basics. Let's go into details for some of the areas that we had to implement. The first one is related to database connectivity. For database connectivity, usually there are two main approaches. The first one is with some ORM solution, and the second is closer to plain old JDBC. So in case of ORM, you are writing persisting objects. In case of JDBC, you are writing SQL queries. ORM is usually annotation-based, so you just need to add some annotations to your code, and that's it. For JDBC, it requires much more boilerplate code, so it should be handled almost manually. And ORM is quite simple to develop. Plain JDBC could be helpful if in future you have to do some performance fine-tuning, because again you have your queries and you have better control of what is going on and how your queries actually work. But here during this decision we have one more argument which makes almost impossible to choose the left side. We need to take a data from the existing DB. So it means that part of the database is actually not under our control. That was quite a surprise, but yeah, still we have to deal with it. This data is consumed by our application, and sometimes, and it could be changed not only by us. It means that plain JDBC seems to be better for us, and we are actually okay with writing SQL code. Boilerplate code is the thing which is really annoying. So here we tried to find another approach, and here we have found the third solution. Actually, we used it already in our other project, and this is database connectivity, SQL Mapper framework, MyBatis. So MyBatis is not an ORM. It helps you to map your methods with the queries. So instead of mapping objects to entities, to tables, you just map methods with queries. It means that you have full control over SQL scripts that you write. You can write the scripts in DB-specific way. And this framework could be either annotation or XML-based. And the main reason why we have chosen this, because it is quite simple. Here I can I can provide some examples. So this is the first one, annotation based. So here it is a really simple case where you have some method decorated with this annotation with the query in it. And my betas do all the magic, so it just map this to your entity. If you need something a bit more advanced, you can go ahead with XML mapping. In this case, you can specify that your query is mapped to some result map, which is defined in XML configuration. So in XML configuration, you can specify exact relation between properties of the object and columns in the response. And if you need some more advanced handling, you can also define your own type handlers that could do this mapping in some different manner. Also, one more nice feature of dynamic SQL is of my betas is dynamic SQL. It allows you to write some queries in Java code. So as you can see in this example, we have some where closed in some if Java statements, but at the same time it still looks like a database query. So it could be convenient. We tried this. Sometimes it's a bit wordy, but overall impression of dynamic SQL and my betas in general was quite positive for the team. So basically, we can recommend this for such cases. For database migrations, usually we have two main options here, Liquibase versus Flyway. In our other project, we usually use Liquibase. So in this case, we just gave a try to Flyway. What I can say here is that it simply it works. So it is easily integrated with Spring Boot, and we don't have any particular feedback. It just works. So here, I believe that both could be chosen. So the next topic is security, and for security, it is also quite dangerous zone because user management is really complex if it is done properly. In this project, from scratch, we just had to introduce some simple role-based model. And in future, it was expected that we will add some Active Directory support. We decided to not reinvent the wheel here and started with quite solid and well-known service called Keycloak. This is identity and access management service. It supports most of the standard protocols. It is container friendly. I believe it is a bit overcomplicated for our particular task at this stage, but it is still easily integrated with Spring Boot. So we just added the container Keycloak to our solution, have configured this, and as one more cool thing is that it has a powerful admin console. And this admin console was shared with our support team, with some IT guys on the client side, and they are really happy just to do some simple configuration there. A few words about front-end stack. On the front-end stack, guys also tried to check new technologies, and in addition to their common choice as React and TypeScript, they tried Undesign, Next, and other frameworks. I would say that not all of those frameworks were considered as a successful experience, but I believe this is a topic for another discussion, and we can discuss it afterwards with our front-end guys, who I believe is also here. So, is that all? It turns out that no, and one day client came to us and said that they have implemented some logic on their end, and it would be nice if we will integrate with this logic. So let's say a few words about integrations. Here I need to say that one of the key business of our client is in option portfolio management. So they have a really good experience in creating and testing some models, and there is a lot of math behind this. So for all of these calculations, quite standard tool which is used is R language. R language is like standard for statistical computing. And when we checked that script that we need to integrate, it turned out that it has more than 9,000 lines of code, completely hard to read. And it could be run only in specific environment of R. And yeah, obviously it was too complex to re-implement this thing, so we really had to integrate this somehow to our solution. So we have started some investigation how we can add our support to Java or Java virtual machine. We checked some libraries, and I can say that no one from this list was not so not suitable for us, because some of them requires some additional configuration of the environment, quite complicated, adding some libraries or adding some other strange stuff to your class path. So all of them will bring a lot of complexity to our solution. So actually, we would like to add our support, but don't add complexity. Actually, we understood that we basically don't need to do a math in R in our system, but instead we just need to obtain the results which are calculated externally. So we just need some communication between Java and R code, and we found some simple solution which is called Plumber. So instead of adding R support to Java, we just added a new service, again Docker-based, thanks to Docker, that just takes our environment and covers our script with some REST API, and this API could be easily consumed in our application. So here is an example how it looks like in R. So we just asked the developer on the client side to introduce some APIs and add some annotations, and that's it. Just to provide better testability of all of these things, we also added one more container with R related with RStudio. So in the system, we also have an IDE that could be used by developer from the client side just to change some code, to launch it and to test it right here. And this RStudio is extremely powerful, and it even has some Swagger UI for our APIs that we have created right here. So it was quite an interesting experience, and developers on the client side are okay with this solution as well. So unfortunately, this is not all integrations that we had. The same thing was for some Python code, for some third-party services, for some in-house market data that we also should obtain from some internal client's infrastructure. And as I mentioned before, we'll have some data loaders that communicates directly with the database. So we haven't had legacy on our end, but definitely we have some restrictions and limitations, and the big variety of different technologies on the client side. And here we try to follow the very simple principle. So first, try to document these APIs and try to extract some microservices that could be connected to our solution. So yeah, here we understood that documentations and specifications are really important. So let's talk a bit about our specification approach. I believe that most of you are aware of OpenAPI, also known as Swagger. Does everybody use it? So, okay, cool. So yeah, this is absolute standard if we are talking about REST API, and as soon as REST API is our main API for communicating between backend and frontend, this is the specification format that we use. It is very important when we are talking about specification to make them consistent between backend and frontend. So we started with quite standard approach where we have code generation for the client. In our case, this is TypeScript. And on the server side, we just generating this specification based on implementation. This is a standard approach, so you just need to add some annotations to better document your API. But yeah, in this case, this is an example of adding some properties to methods, and as a result, you will have some API like this, where you have your methods and your models documented. But let's say our junior developer is going to do some refactoring on the server side, and let's say we have changed the type of one of the property, or just added some new enum value. And in case of changing the type, it was a DTO object most probably. For this enum, if you have some leakage of layers, probably it is even a change on the business logic level. So it means that, and if this change wasn't carefully found on the review stage, you will have your specification with different attributes. Some of them could break the logic on the front-end side. Some of them could be just added, and front-end team will be unaware that you have some changes. I believe this is even less pleasant situation. So there is a lot of other downside of specification generation. So instead of generating the spec in this project, we decided to use another approach. This is actually generating the code. In this case, you don't need to write implementation first. You need to agree the specification. You should write the specification and discuss it between backend and frontend teams. Then we have the same step of TypeScript generation. And for the server side, we also used code generation. Since we have chosen Spring MVC, Spring here, we are generating controller interface. We are generating all DTO models, including enums. So you will have something like this finally. You will have some interface that you need to implement with particular logic. And yeah, that's it. So for code-first approach, it has a very slow feedback loop. It has your framework could affect your API actually. The worst thing is that client should wait implementation before you can proceed with front-end development. But it is quite simple on the server side. In contrast, approach with specification first allows you to have a really fast feedback for the API. So you can agree on API and actually start the development in parallel from both sides using mocking, some prototyping, and a lot of tools which are available for specification handling. Also, because your specification is discussed first and actually you review specification, the quality of the specification is much better. So we was really happy with this approach. And one more cool thing that we have received in advance is better approach for static documentation, because sometimes we need to send some PDF or HTML files. This documentation could contain some additional details, some examples, some instructions. So what we do here, we are actually using ASCII Doctor plugin. And first of all, based on the specification, we are generating some ASCII doc files with specification. Then we can add some ASCII doc documentation written manually. And as a result, with ASCII Doctor plugin, we can finally have our HTML and PDF documents. So it will look like this. Quite beautiful. I know that there are other tools and other approaches, but in our project we just added these two, and they are also available next to our system deployed. So what about the tests? For sure we use unit tests, and for sure we need integration tests. So basically we need to test how our API works. The bad thing here is that our database is non-standard. So what we would like to do is not just testing the service with some mock database and memory database and for example, security service mocked. But we would like to test it with better coverage. So here we just tried test containers. So we use RealDB, we use all flyway migrations, we use real tokens from Keycloak in our tests, and real requests. It is also quite easily added to our application with some configuration. Yeah, and a few words about processes. Yeah, basically here we had a chance to rethink some of our processes that we use for development. We still follow Agile Scrum methodology. We have 2 weeks iterations. We use Jira Confluence, Stash for handling requirements and issues. and we use CI/CD in TeamCity. So what the main thing that we would like to change in our process is to introduce faster feedback for issues that could be found in any stages, actually. So that's why we have introduced grooming sessions for better feedback for requirements. We have specification review, as I described. We have dev review with higher priority than further development. For sure, we do tests in CI. And here we still need manual QA process because, again, business logic is quite complicated. UI is quite complicated. So we cannot just deploy without manual QA checks. As an old good approach with testing, we had quite a lot of time to feedback originally. It means that if you just open your PR, then merge it, then release in the end of the sprint, and only then have some release notes tested and some defect reports raised by the QA team, your feedback time is weeks, so it is really slow. The first attempt that was done is in sprint testing. It means that after the merging of the PR, we can deploy it to some environment via CI. And inside the sprint, we can do these tests, raise these bugs, and fix them. But it is still too long. So here in this project, we finally introduced QA review process. It means that your QA engineer doesn't need your code to be merged or deployed somewhere because we have Docker and everything could be run locally or to some environment. So in order to simplify further this process and to involve more people in this acceptance, now we are working on a new initiative. So here we have a dedicated platform where we have all PRs which are currently in the review deployed there. So it means that QA engineer can go, QA engineer or analyst or even client could go to some dashboard, click some link and open the platform for some particular code branch. It really helps us to test some ideas, to change the versioning approach, because sometimes we have faster acceptance for different features for the client. So yeah, this tool is still in progress, but we are really happy with the first results. For conclusion, what we like finally in the things that we have just discussed. First of all, we like that project is still simple internally, and comparing to other projects that we have, it is quite easy to add something new there because it's really straightforward. We are happy to have some experience with new technologies for us. Mostly this is Keycloak, MyBetis, test containers. This thing we would like to bring to our other projects if there is a chance. We are really happy to have Docker from the beginning, and spec first approach is really promising. What we would like to improve? First of all, looks like REST API is not enough for us, and we already have cases where we have more complicated interactions with the front end, with other services. Here, instead of switching to web services, WebSockets, we are going to go further to some more event-driven APIs, and we have some plans to check async API here with some message broker integration like Kafka, for example. Because, yeah, as I said, some UI interactions really need to be improved. We would like to try Kotlin here because the moment of the project start, we just haven't made this decision. And yeah, as I said, acceptance process, we would like to involve more people here. Ideally, we would like to involve even client because, again, client is really open and we can test some features and have immediate feedback without merging something to our main code repository. Yeah, what are our final conclusions and what I hopefully could be useful for you as well. So please be ready with legacy. Even if you start the project from scratch, you will have something, you will have some integrations. Also be aware of overcomplicated frameworks because they can ruin your simplicity easily. And yeah, actually keeping things simple is not so simple. From another hand, we see that simple technologies will help you to focus on the business logic and some process stuff, which is really cool. The proper frameworks can easily boost your development and you will save a lot of time just doing some business-related features. And yeah, actually containers is a big step ahead. It was like this for us because we was able to do some great process improvements and decrease our cycle time. And yeah, once again, specification first, technology agnostic approach is cool and promising. So in future, we already see how we define some specifications and generate different server and client side prototypes based on this specification. So yeah, and I believe that we have quite a lot of ideas, and next time we will start the new projects better. Thank you.